I am a registered nurse and a mandatory reporter. For 11 years, those two facts have existed in service of my patients. Last July, I used them both to report my own mother to the state of South Carolina after she rode Space Mountain, while my 11-year-old daughter spent 9 hours alone in a house with 3 children under the age of 4. 24 hours later, my phone had received 19 calls and 11 texts from people who had been at the park. My mother was crying about her credit. My sister was crying about her job. 3 cousins I had not spoken to in months sent messages asking me to please just fix it. My uncle called twice. I want to tell you exactly what I told all of them. I said I was a mandatory reporter and the report had been made and it followed a state process, and I was not able to undo what I had done. I said this carefully and precisely every time because I am a professional who understands the difference between information and emotion, and I needed my family to understand that what was happening to them was not emotional. It was arithmetical. This is the arithmetic. Doreen has been keeping a travel journal since she was 9 years old. Not a diary. A travel journal. She will explain the difference to you if you give her approximately 45 seconds and a listening face. A diary is for what happened to you. A travel journal is for where you are going. She found the current volume at a library sale. Spiral-bound, light blue cover, previous owner's handwriting soaked off over 2 patient afternoons with a damp cloth. Because she did not believe in wasting paper, and she believed very specifically in starting things clean. She has been this kind of person since before I had the language to describe it. Precise, deliberate. The child who decided at 6 that her handwriting was sloppy and spent a summer correcting it, not because anyone told her to, but because she had standards she had arrived at herself and intended to keep. The Disneyland section of her current journal begins on page 43. She started it 11 months before the trip. Page 43 opens with a pencil sketch of Cinderella's castle, not traced from a photograph, drawn from memory, from a photograph she had studied long enough to reproduce. Underneath the drawing, she wrote, "First thing I want to see," in the small, careful print she has used since the summer she fixed her handwriting. Below that, Pirates of the Caribbean, historically interesting. Below that, Monte Cristo sandwich at Blue Bayou. Daddy said it tastes like a dream. Need to verify. Her father and I divorced when Doreen was 4. He is not a bad man. He mentioned that sandwich at her birthday dinner 3 years ago. And Doreen wrote it in the journal because she writes down things people say about places they have loved. She calls this practice collecting testimony. Page 51 holds a packing list, comfortable shoes, sun protection, portable phone charger, the journal itself, and at the bottom, marked with a small star she drew carefully in pencil, a notation about the Mickey Mouse luggage tag she bought at a thrift store in February for 50 cents. She tied it to her backpack the morning she bought it. She had not removed it in 5 months. That backpack was sitting by our front door on the Sunday morning in July, when I left for my 12-hour shift at 6:30. The Mickey Mouse tag was facing outward. Doreen was still asleep in our room. The family was supposed to leave for Disneyland at 8. She was still there when I came home. My mother, Vera, is 61 years old. In our family, she occupies the position that the word matriarch is designed for. The fixed point that everything else organizes around. She makes birthday cakes from scratch. She calls on the right hard anniversaries, the ones other people forget. She has driven 40 minutes with food for relatives who did not ask because she noticed they needed it and acted before being asked, which is a genuine quality of love that I have never disputed and am not disputing now. These things are real and they belong in any honest accounting of who she is. What she also has is a calculus. A private, consistent, never discussed calculus for who absorbs cost when cost needs to be absorbed. That person had been me since the day I moved back into her house 4 years ago, after the divorce. Because I needed stability for Doreen, and I needed time to recover, and Vera offered a room, and I accepted because I was too exhausted and too grateful to ask what the offer was actually going to require. Here is what it required, precisely and in full, because vagueness is its own dishonesty. $900 a month in rent. $43,200 across 4 years. Household groceries, mine, Vera's, and whoever else was around. Which was usually quite a few people, because Vera ran an open kitchen, averaged between $600 and $700 a month across 4 years. $28,000. My sister Tamara has 3 children. James, age 3, Shelley, age 2, and Jonah, who turned 1 in March. She works 4 days a week at a nail salon. She does not have a formal childcare arrangement. What she has had for 2 years is me. On days I am not working and her children come to the house. On days when the alignments do not hold, I rearrange shifts, leave early, drive children to other locations, and have on at least one occasion sat in a hospital break room with a toddler on my lap and hoped no one from administration walked past the door. I have never charged Tamara $1. I have also missed 12 shifts across those 2 years. Not full days, but partial shifts, early clockouts, the kind of schedule disruption that affects your relationship with your charge nurse and your ability to pick up overtime and your professional standing in ways that are real, but hard to put a number on. I have the timesheets. I keep detailed records. It is an occupational habit. I am telling you all of this not because I need to be praised for any of it. I am telling you because it is the infrastructure and what they were calling me the morning after I made that report, begging me to fix it, begging me to undo it, was not a daughter. It was an infrastructure system they had never thought to check the load-bearing requirements of, and the infrastructure had turned itself off. There is one more thing I need to tell you before I get to the day, because the day makes no sense without it. 6 months before the Disneyland trip, I bought a small camera for our living room. It is not a hidden camera. It sits on the bookshelf, visible, obvious, the kind of device that anyone walking into the room can see within 30 seconds. I bought it because I am a single working mother with 12-hour shifts, and there were evenings when Doreen was home with Tamara's children while I was still on the floor, and I wanted to be able to pull up my phone during a break and confirm that everyone was upright and not in crisis. Doreen knew it was there. She helped me set it up. It records continuously and stores footage to a cloud account on my phone. I checked it maybe twice a week, usually from the break room at lunch. Not because I was watching for anything in particular, just because it was available and checking it cost nothing, and it gave me a 15-second confirmation that the living room was calm. On the Sunday in July, it recorded the entire day. I watched the footage that night after I put Doreen to bed, before I sat down at the kitchen table to do the 2 things I was about to do. I want to tell you what I saw, because you need to understand that what came next was not reactive. It was documented. 8:56 a.m., the family car pulls out of the driveway. Doreen stands at the living room window and watches it go. She stands there for 45 seconds, from the time the car pulls away until it is no longer visible from that window. Then she turns around. 9:12. Jonah begins crying. She picks him up. 11:04. James spills something in the kitchen. She cleans it up one-handed while still holding Jonah with her other arm. She does not put him down to clean. She manages both simultaneously. 12:18. She makes lunch. Peanut butter sandwiches. She cuts James's into triangles because she knows he prefers triangles, and she cuts Shelley's into squares because she knows Shelley prefers squares. She does these things from knowledge, not instruction. No one told her the preferences in any orientation I witnessed. She learned them from 2 years of being around those children. She does not eat herself for another 40 minutes. The children eat first. 2:29. Jonah begins crying and will not stop. She tries holding him upright. She tries the bouncy seat. She tries walking with him. At 2:32, she sits down on the kitchen floor with him, and she is crying. Not performing crying the way a child cries when they are genuinely scared and genuinely alone and have held it together for 6 hours and have run out of the capacity to hold it any further. She presses the back of her wrist against her mouth. She has done this since she was small, this specific gesture, when she is being careful about feelings in front of other people. And then she picks up her phone and she calls me. 2:56. Jonah has stopped crying. She's walking him back and forth across the living room. She is humming. I could not make out what she was humming. She walked him for 20 minutes. 4:41. All 3 children are asleep. She sits on the couch. She opens the travel journal to page 43. She sits with it for a long time without turning the page. That footage is 4 hours and 11 minutes in total. I watched all of it. Now let me tell you about the other piece of evidence I collected that evening, not from the camera. While I was in a hospital supply closet at 2:32 p.m., teaching my 11-year-old daughter how to assess a 1-year-old for distress over the phone, my sister Tamara was in front of Cinderella's castle with a churro. I know this because I checked her Instagram at 7:15 when I sat in the hospital parking lot after my shift. The post was timestamped 2:41 p.m. My mother was in the photograph. She was laughing at something off camera. The churro was enormous. The castle was lit up behind them. The caption said, "Best day ever. Family is everything." 23 likes, 6 heart emojis. Comments from the church friends Vera had been telling about the trip for 3 months. Best day ever. At 2:41 p.m., Doreen had been alone with those children for almost 6 hours. 9 minutes earlier, she had been crying on a kitchen floor. When I arrived home and opened the front door, the living room lights were low. Doreen was on the couch. James was asleep against her left side. Shelley was on the floor with her head on a sweatshirt Doreen had taken from the coat closet and rolled into a pillow. Jonah was in the bouncy seat. Doreen had the travel journal open in her lap. Page 43. The castle drawing. She was looking at it without reading. She looked up when I came in. She said, "I think James might have a rash. I changed him, but I wasn't sure if I did it right and I didn't know the correct amount of cream. I didn't want to put on too much." That was the first thing she said to me. Not they left me. Not I was scared. The first thing was about the rash and whether she had used the right amount of cream, because she had been managing a situation with incomplete information all day, and that was the detail she had not been able to resolve, and she needed someone with professional knowledge to confirm she had handled it adequately. She closed the journal. The Mickey Mouse luggage tag was still on the backpack by the front door. She had never left with it. I checked James. I confirmed the cream was fine. I put Doreen to bed. I sat at the kitchen table and I did 2 things. I called the Child Protective Services hotline for our county. I identified myself as a registered nurse filing a mandatory report. I gave names, ages, and the address. I gave the name of the adult responsible for the supervisory arrangement. I stated the duration, approximately 10 hours of sole supervision by an 11-year-old minor of 3 children under 4 years of age. I noted that one child had developed a potential skin condition during the unsupervised period, and that the supervising minor had not been left with adequate supplies or professional medical guidance. I said I was making this report because the circumstances met the threshold for inadequate supervision, and that I was filing in my professional capacity as a mandatory reporter, because that was the accurate description of what I was doing. When the mandatory reporter designation is applied to a report, it carries more procedural weight than a standard call. The investigator who followed up with me 3 days later told me my account was among the most detailed and clinically organized she had received in a residential matter that year. She did not say this as a compliment. She said it as a statement of fact. I received it the same way. Then I wrote Vera a note, handwritten, no possibility of claiming she did not receive it. It said, "I will need 30 days to find alternative arrangements for Doreen and myself. I will continue to pay rent through the end of next month. As of today, I am no longer providing childcare for tomorrow's children, and I am no longer covering household groceries. These arrangements are ending because of what happened today. I did not sign it with love. I signed it with my name. I placed it on the kitchen table and went to bed." Vera came home at 11:15. I heard the car. I did not go out. She knocked on my door at 7:12 the next morning. I was getting ready for work. She came in holding the note with both hands. Her face was doing something I had not often seen it do. The specific expression of a woman who has not yet decided whether she is angry or scared and is running both simultaneously. "You can't just stop the groceries," she said. "I gave you 30 days on the room." I said, "I'll honor that." She said, "This is a dramatic overreaction." I said, "An 11-year-old was alone with 3 children under 4 for approximately 10 hours. She called me at 2:30 because she was on the kitchen floor crying because she didn't know how to stop a 1-year-old from screaming. I have the camera footage." Vera said, "She handled it." I want you to sit with those 2 words. She handled it. That was my mother's full accounting of what my daughter had done, and it was framed not as a problem, but as a resolution. The fact that Doreen had handled it was the evidence Vera was presenting that nothing requiring addressing had occurred. I said, "I also made a report to Child Protective Services last night." Vera went very still. I said, "I'm a mandatory reporter. What happened yesterday meets the legal threshold for inadequate supervision. I filed accurately." She said, "You reported, Tamara." "I reported the circumstances. The investigation determines accountability." I went to work. The call started at 9:47. Tamara's voicemails ran from confused to panicked to frantic, and then settled into a register I had not heard from her before. The small, stripped-back voice of someone who has run out of postures to try. A CPS worker had contacted her. There was an open investigation. Her employer had been informed because documentation of formal childcare arrangements was now required. She had missed her shift, she had lost a day's pay, and she was not certain what it meant for her position. She was panicking about one missed shift. I had missed 12 shifts in 2 years to cover her. I sat in the parking lot at 7:15, and I listened to everything before I returned a single call. When Tamara answered, her voice was already in the small register. She said, "Can you please just call them and tell them Doreen is okay? That it was fine?" I said, Doreen was on the kitchen floor at 2:30 because she was scared and she didn't know what was wrong with a 1-year-old, and there was no adult she could reach. Silence. I said, "I have the footage." The silence after that was different from the silence before it. "I'm a mandatory reporter," I said. "I can't undo the report, and I wouldn't if I could." I called Vera back. I told her to pull up Tamara's Instagram, to find the churro photo, to read the caption, and then to tell me once more who was overreacting. She said, "You don't need to send that to anyone." I sent it to the family group chat that night, not a 30-second clip. The full nanny cam footage, edited to the 4 key sequences and timestamped. Alongside it, a screenshot of the Instagram post, the castle, the churro, the caption, timestamp 2:41 p.m., sent to 23 people, including Vera's church friends who had pressed heart emojis on the churro photo, including Damon, my mother's nephew, who had been staying at the house and had been in the park that day. I did not write anything in the message. The footage and the photo said everything that needed saying. The contrast required no narration. My phone went silent for 4 hours. Then Vera called. She was not talking about the CPS report anymore. She was talking about Sister Paulette, who had sent her a message, about what the church circle was saying, about her reputation, the one she had spent 30 years building on the premise of family being everything. I said, the caption said family is everything at 2:41 p.m. The footage shows what family was actually doing at 2:41 p.m. She said nothing. I said, I'm going to bed. The CPS investigation did not resolve with the class, because Tamara had been at the park while her children were in the unsupervised care of an 11-year-old minor. The state classified the situation as abandonment of care rather than inadequate supervision, a meaningful legal distinction. Tamara's case moved to a supervised parenting track. During the 12 weeks of Tamara's program, her 3 children were placed in my temporary custody. I was the named caregiver on the court documentation. I was the person the state determined was the appropriate temporary guardian, which meant that to see James, Shelley, and Jonah, Vera had to call me. She had to ask. She had to receive a yes from the person she had treated as a resource rather than a person for 4 years. I want to be precise here because I think precision matters. I said yes when it was appropriate for the children. Those visits happened. I am not the kind of person who uses children to punish adults, and I did not. But I will not pretend there was nothing specific about the first time Vera knocked on my door and asked what days were available for her to see the grandchildren she had driven away from in a car on a Sunday morning while one of her other grandchildren stood at the window watching. She said, "Can I see them this Sunday?" I said, "Yes, 2 to 5. She said, "Thank you." I said, "They'll be glad to see you." That was the whole conversation. There was nothing I needed to add to it. The distance between her standing in my doorway asking permission for something she had previously assumed without question. That distance was doing all of its own work. Tamara now pays for documented childcare, between $800 and $1,000 a month depending on the week. She has missed 3 additional shifts since July. She has not called me to cover them. Here is the full accounting, because I said I would be specific, and I will be. 4 years of rent, $43,200. 4 years of household groceries, approximately $28,000. 2 years of childcare and shift disruption, 12 missed shifts, roughly 400 hours of unpaid labor, and a professional standing impact I cannot quantify precisely, but I know was real. Total financial infrastructure I had been providing to that household, somewhere north of $70,000 across 4 years. I was not a tenant, I was the foundation. When I stopped being the foundation, the house felt it. Vera's utility bill was late in September. Her credit took a hit she had not budgeted for. Damon moved back in. It was not enough. By November, she was behind on the mortgage by 2 payments. By January, the bank had sent a notice. Foreclosure proceedings are not a fast process. The house is not gone yet, but the notice has been received and the process is running. She called me last month. Not about Doreen. Not about the footage or the church friends or the CPS report or the 12 weeks of supervised custody or any of the things that had happened since July. She called because the bank had sent the letter and she wanted to know if I could help. I want to tell you exactly what I said. I said, "I'm not the foundation anymore, Mom." She said, "I spent 30 years in that house." I said, "I know." She said, "You're going to let it go into foreclosure over one day?" Over one day. That is the sentence that tells you the calculus she is still running. One day, one trip, one churro, one caption. That is her accounting of what occurred. I said, "Doreen spent 9 months planning a trip and 9 hours babysitting instead. You have been calling what she does resilience for 2 years and calling what I paid for it free. The lights going out is the cost of the silence tax running out." She said, "I don't know what that means." I said, "I know." I did not explain it further. Some things are not for explaining. Some reckonings are just for receiving. Doreen and I drove to Los Angeles in August. I had PTO saved, points on a travel card I had been building since we moved in with Vera, initially to absorb the budget pressure of the rent and groceries and childcare costs, which is its own particular irony I did not understand until I was packing for a trip I was paying for with points accumulated during the years I was subsidizing someone else's life. Hotel booked, 2 tickets purchased, no one else invited. She brought the journal. On the drive from the hotel to the park, she had it open in her lap. Going through the routing, she had optimized for wait times and proximity. She informed me of the logic as we walked from the parking structure, and I told her I trusted her completely, and she accepted this with the quiet satisfaction of an expert whose expertise has been acknowledged. Pirates of the Caribbean first. Historically interesting, she said, also genuinely good. We ate at Blue Bayou. She ordered the Monte Cristo sandwich and ate 2/3 of it, and declared her father's testimony confirmed and wrote this in the journal at the table with the same small, careful print she had been using since she was 6. I watched her write. I thought about page 43. I thought about the footage, the kitchen floor, the wrist pressed to the mouth. I thought about the outfit hung back in the closet. I thought about the talent show program folded into a square. I thought about every increment at which she had arrived at okay when she should not have had to. She bought Mickey Mouse ears near the castle and put them on over her braids and wore them through the rest of the day with the total lack of self-consciousness she has always had about her own happiness. She does not perform happiness. She simply has it when it is available to her, and she takes it without apology. And that quality has survived everything, and I do not take it for granted. At dusk, near the castle, she stopped walking. She looked at it. Not for a photograph. Not for anyone. She looked at it the way she looks at things she has been planning to see for a long time, with the quiet recognition of someone arriving somewhere they drew from memory and finding it accurate. She took out the journal. She opened to page 43. She found the castle drawing she had made 11 months earlier, and she drew a small star in the bottom corner, below the words, "First thing I want to see." And then she closed the journal and put it back in her bag and said, "That's the one." To herself, already moving to the next item on the list. My mother still tells people I attacked her with illegal filing. I have stopped correcting this with anyone except myself. What I did was file an accurate mandatory report and then stop providing the financial infrastructure that had been allowing a household to treat my daughter as a default resource while calling it family love. Those are 2 distinct things from an attack, and the people who need to understand the distinction already do. The silence tax is what I've started calling it, because it is the most precise description of what I was paying. Every grocery run was a payment, every covered shift was a payment, every hour of free childcare, every outfit hung neatly back in a closet, every talent show my daughter attended without a grandmother, every beach trip she sat out. Every time I absorbed the cost without naming it, I was paying for the right to stay quiet about what the arrangement was doing to my daughter. The tax ran for 4 years. When the Sunday in July arrived, I stopped paying it. The foreclosure proceedings have started. The church friends have grown quieter. Tamara pays for childcare now and understands that this is the permanent arrangement. The social media post is still up. I checked last week. Family is everything is still the caption. 23 likes. I did not unlike it. I don't need to. Here is what I need you to know about Doreen. She is on Volume 5 of the Travel Journal. Volume 5 begins with a spread about New Orleans, which she has designated as the next destination. There is a sketch of a wrought iron balcony, researched from photographs. There is a section on beignets that includes source testimony from 3 different people about the correct powdered sugar to beignet ratio. There is a packing list. There is a small star in the upper corner of the first page, the star she now places at the beginning of a new destination to mark it as coming, rather than at the end to mark it as done. She told me this is a new system she is trying. Put the star at the beginning to show it is already claimed, then confirm it by being there. She is 11 years old and she made this rule herself. I am not the person who fixes my mother's cracks anymore. I am the person in the passenger seat watching my daughter put the star at the beginning. That is the only accounting that matters now. Subscribe. Like this. Share it with the person who has been paying the silence tax so long they have forgotten it was negotiable. And tell me in the comments, when you finally stop being someone's foundation, what did they say when they felt the weight of it land? I want to know. I want to collect the testimony.